All right, let's dive into one of the most frustrating things in all of PC gaming. You spent all this money, you've built a beast of a machine, and yet something's just not right. The game doesn't feel as smooth as it's supposed to.
So, you fire up a game, right? And that little counter in the corner, it's showing a beautiful number, 120 FPS. That should feel like butter. It should be amazing. But it doesn't. The camera feels kind of choppy, your mouse feels like it's dragging through mud. The whole thing just feels wrong. So what is going on here? Why is there this huge gap between the number on the screen and what we're actually feeling?
So the very first step in solving this mystery is realizing that the FPS counter, that number we've all been taught to trust, is basically creating an illusion. We think it's telling us the whole performance story, but the truth is, it's only showing us one tiny piece of the puzzle.
So what does that FPS number actually mean anyway? It's really just a simple head count. That's it. It's just counting the total number of pictures, or frames, your graphics card spits out in 1 second. So it tells us how many frames we're getting, sure, but it tells us absolutely nothing about when we get them or how consistently they show up.
And that's the real problem, see? The FPS counter is completely blind to all the stuff that actually makes the game feel smooth. It can't see the rhythm of the frames, it has no clue about the delay between you clicking your mouse and something happening on screen, and it's totally unaware if other parts of your computer are causing these tiny, annoying interruptions.
And this brings us to a really crucial idea. It's not about the quantity of frames you get, it's all about the quality of their delivery. And believe me, for a game to feel truly smooth, that quality is way more important. Think about it this way. High FPS just means a lot of frames showed up. That's it. But smooth gameplay, that means those frames are arriving at perfectly even, predictable intervals, like a steady rhythm. See, having 120 frames is great and all, but if they all show up in these jerky, inconsistent bunches, your brain isn't going to see smoothness. It's going to see and feel a stutter.
Let's break down how this actually plays out in real time. So imagine 4 frames are on their way to your screen. The first one arrives super fast. Nice. But then, the next one is really delayed. It takes 40 milliseconds. Then you get another quick one, followed by another long 30 millisecond wait. Now, if you average all that out, your FPS might look really high. But what you actually experience are those big delays. That 40 millisecond gap, oh yeah, you can absolutely feel that as a stutter. And these little delays, they actually have a name. We call them micro-stutters. See, because the FPS counter is usually just showing you an average over a whole second, these tiny, jarring spikes just get smoothed out in the math. They become completely invisible to the counter. But here's the thing, they are very visible to your eyes and your brain. We are incredibly sensitive to any kind of inconsistent motion. So if your GPU is just pumping out frames like crazy, then what in the world is causing these delays? Well, to figure that out, we have to look deeper into the system, because there are these hidden culprits at work, long before a single frame ever gets close to your screen.
Okay, so before your powerful GPU can even think about drawing a picture, your CPU, the brain of the computer, has this giant to-do list. First, it has to process all the game's logic, like what every enemy is doing. Then it's got to handle all the physics calculations, and only after all that can it package everything up into instructions for the GPU. It is a massive amount of work.
Now here's where things can go wrong. If the CPU gets overwhelmed by all that work, it creates what we call a bottleneck. The best way to picture it is like a factory. Your GPU is this incredibly fast assembly line, ready to go. But the CPU is the person who has to supply all the parts to that line. If the CPU can't keep up, well, the assembly line just has to sit there, waiting. And that's exactly what your powerful GPU does. It waits. And that is what creates that uneven, stuttery delivery of frames, even though your GPU is totally capable of going faster.
And then there's a totally different kind of lag that the FPS counter knows nothing about: input lag. This has nothing to do with how the game looks and everything to do with how it feels. It's that little delay, between when you click your mouse or press a key and when you actually see the reaction on screen. A game can look perfectly smooth, like liquid, but still feel sluggish and unresponsive if that input lag is high. So what's often causing these stutters and delays? Well, a really common culprit is actually just your own computer's background tasks. Think about it. A quick antivirus scan that kicks in, a system update check, anything that suddenly steals the CPU's attention for just a split second can interrupt the game's flow.
Another sneaky cause is something called asset streaming.
Modern games are just way too big to load everything into memory at once, so they load stuff like textures and models from your hard drive or SSD as you play. But if your storage drive is on the slower side, the game might have to literally pause for a fraction of a second to go find and fetch that data. To you, it feels like a big stutter, but to the FPS counter, which is averaging things out, it barely even notices.
So we know delays can come from the CPU, from storage, but the problem isn't always inside your PC case. Sometimes the issue is completely external. It could be the connection to your monitor, or it could be happening all the way across the internet.
You know this one for sure. In any online game, what feels like your PC is lagging might actually be network lag. Your computer could be rendering frames perfectly, just flawlessly. But if it's stuck waiting for information from the game's server, you're going to see characters teleporting around, and your shots just won't seem to register. The whole time your FPS counter is showing a fantastic number, while the game itself feels totally broken.
And finally, let's not forget the monitor itself. Your monitor redraws the picture on its screen at a fixed speed. That's the refresh rate. Now, if your PC is sending frames at a completely different out-of-sync speed, you can get nasty visual problems like screen tearing or even more stutter. And what's wild is that even the technologies we use to fix this, like VSync, can sometimes introduce their own kind of lag. You're just trading one problem for another.
All right, let's pull all of this together. It's pretty clear that our obsession with that one single FPS number has really been leading us down the wrong path. Real, genuine smoothness isn't about one single component maxing out. It's about the health of the entire system, everything working together in perfect harmony.
So that feel of a truly smooth game, it's built from all these different ingredients. It comes from frames that are paced consistently, one after the other. It comes from low latency across the entire system, not just the graphics card. It needs a stable CPU and enough fast memory. And of course, it needs your mouse and keyboard to feel instant and responsive.
So, at the end of the day, just chasing that higher and higher FPS number is kind of missing the point. The real goal isn't just getting the biggest number possible. The goal is a perfectly consistent, totally responsive experience, where every single part of the system is working together, seamlessly.
So the next time your game feels a little off, even though your FPS counter looks great, now you'll know why. It's not really about the frames per second, it's about the quality of every single millisecond. Which leaves us with one last question. Are you chasing the right number?